In the cold, unforgiving streets of Chicago, Sarah never imagined her life would change with the wag of a tail. Living alone in a dangerous neighborhood, she sought protection, but found something far greater: a retired police dog named Cooper. Their bond grew strong, but one night at an ATM, a shadowy figure approached, and Cooper's reaction would reveal a stunning twist. What happened next will restore your faith in loyalty and second chances. Stay with us for this heartwarming tale of trust, courage, and the unbreakable bond between a woman and her dog. Sarah lived in a quiet yet dangerous corner of Chicago, where the wailing sirens of police cars and the echo of arguments in alleyways served as the backdrop to her daily life. At 35, she had grown accustomed to the city's harsh realities, though they often weighed on her more than she cared to admit. Alone, in her modest apartment, Sarah had faced years of solitude after a difficult divorce. The city was no place for the faint-hearted, and for Sarah it was a constant battle to balance her resilience with the lingering fear that shadowed her every step. One particularly cold afternoon, while scrolling through community boards online, Sarah stumbled upon a notice that would change her life. A retired police dog was up for adoption at the local animal shelter. The ad described the dog, Cooper, as a well-trained golden retriever who had served years on the force before retiring due to age. Something about Cooper's story resonated deeply with Sarah. She had spent much of her life caring for others, her ex-husband, her aging parents, and now, perhaps, it was time to have someone care for her in return. The following morning, Sarah bundled up against the chilly wind and made her way to the shelter. As she entered, the familiar scent of animals and faint cleaning chemicals filled the air. Rows of dogs barked and wagged their tails, each vying for attention. But Cooper sat quietly in his pen, his golden fur gleaming under the shelter's fluorescent lights, his intelligent brown eyes watching her intently. A shelter worker named Marcy greeted Sarah warmly. "Are you here to meet Cooper?" she asked, a smile spreading across her face. Sarah nodded, her nerves fluttering. "Yes, I saw the post online. He seems perfect." Marcy led Sarah to Cooper's pen. "He's a retired K9, she explained, served 6 years in the police force. Cooper's calm, obedient, and very loyal, but he's been overlooked here because people want younger dogs. Honestly, I think he just needs a good home." Sarah crouched down to meet Cooper's gaze. "Hey there, buddy," she said softly, extending her hand through the bars. Cooper approached cautiously, sniffing her hand before nudging it gently with his nose. "That's a good sign," Marcy said. "He doesn't warm up to everyone." Sarah felt an unexpected sense of calm wash over her. "I think he's perfect," she said decisively. After filling out the necessary paperwork and receiving instructions on Cooper's care, Sarah took him home. As they walked through her neighborhood, the sight of Cooper by her side drew curious glances from passers-by. Sarah noticed that even the usual loiterers who hung around the corner convenience store seemed to avoid making eye contact with her. For the first time in years, she felt a sense of safety. At home, Sarah introduced Cooper to his new surroundings. Her apartment was modest but cozy, with a small kitchen, a living room adorned with bookshelves, and a snug bedroom. Cooper explored the space methodically, sniffing every corner as if he were conducting an investigation. "Make yourself at home," Sarah said, laughing softly as Cooper settled near the couch. She set down a soft dog bed and some toys she had picked up on the way back. Cooper eyed the bed, but chose instead to lie near the door, his ears twitching at the slightest noise from the hallway. The first night with Cooper was uneventful but revealing. Sarah noticed his vigilance, how he perked up at the sound of footsteps outside or the distant wail of a siren. He was a protector, through and through. Yet there was a softness to him, a gentleness that made Sarah feel at ease. She stroked his fur as they sat together, the warmth of his presence a stark contrast to the cold city outside. Over the next few weeks, Cooper and Sarah fell into a comfortable routine. Mornings were spent with brisk walks around the neighborhood, where Cooper's confident demeanor seemed to command respect. Sarah noticed that even the usual catcallers stayed silent when Cooper was by her side. It was as if his very presence demanded dignity. During the afternoons, while Sarah worked from home, Cooper would lie by her desk, his head resting on his paws, watching her intently. Occasionally he would nudge her hand, reminding her to take a break. These moments of companionship were small but profound, filling a void Sarah hadn't realized was so deep. One evening, while walking Cooper, Sarah reflected on how much her life had changed in such a short time. She thought about the countless nights she had spent feeling vulnerable and alone, contrasted with the newfound confidence she felt now. Cooper wasn't just a dog. He was a guardian, a friend, and a symbol of hope in a city that had often felt unforgiving. But beneath her gratitude, Sarah couldn't shake a lingering curiosity about Cooper's past. What had his life been like as a police dog? Had he saved lives, chased down criminals, or comforted victims? She found herself wondering if he missed that sense of purpose, or if he was content with his new, quieter role. One evening, Sarah decided to test Cooper's skills. In her living room, she hid his favorite toy behind a chair. "Find it, Cooper," she said, pointing to the spot. Instantly, his demeanor shifted. He sniffed the air, his tail wagging slightly as he honed in on the toy's scent. Within seconds, he retrieved it, his eyes gleaming with pride. "Good boy," Sarah exclaimed, laughing as she ruffled his fur. It was a small moment, but it reminded her of Cooper's past as a highly trained and capable partner. As the weeks turned into months, Cooper became more than a companion. He became family. Sarah often caught herself talking to him as if he were a person, sharing her thoughts and fears. Cooper listened intently, his expressive eyes conveying an understanding that words couldn't. One particularly cold night, Sarah sat by the window sipping tea while Cooper lay at her feet. Snow had begun to fall, blanketing the city in a rare moment of peace. For the first time in years, Sarah felt a flicker of contentment. Life was still far from perfect, but with Cooper by her side, she knew she could face whatever challenges lay ahead. Unbeknownst to Sarah, the journey she had begun with Cooper was only the beginning. What lay ahead would test their bond in ways she couldn't yet imagine. But for now, as the snow fell softly outside, Sarah felt a warmth she hadn't known in a long time, a warmth that came from having a special companion by her side. Sarah's life in Chicago had always been a balancing act between caution and courage. Living alone in a neighborhood where danger lurked in every shadow, she had grown accustomed to keeping her head down, avoiding unnecessary interactions, and rushing home before dark. But with Cooper by her side, everything began to change. From the moment Sarah brought Cooper home, she noticed a shift in the way the world treated her. It was subtle at first. On their morning walks, the usual loiterers who had made catcalling a routine seemed to avert their gazes when they saw Cooper. His calm but commanding presence seemed to communicate a silent warning, "Don't mess with us." For Sarah, this newfound respect was liberating. She walked with her head held higher, her shoulders no longer hunched in a defensive posture. The streets that once felt hostile now seemed less intimidating. Cooper trotted beside her, his tail wagging softly, as if he sensed the change in her demeanor. Cooper wasn't just a deterrent for troublemakers, he was a true guardian. His sharp instincts became evident one evening when Sarah decided to take a longer route home. As they passed a dimly lit alley, Cooper stopped abruptly, his ears perked up and his body tensed. Sarah followed his gaze and noticed a figure moving in the shadows. Her heart raced, but Cooper didn't growl or bark. Instead, he stood firm, his gaze unwavering. The figure retreated into the darkness, and Cooper resumed walking, his calm demeanor unchanged. Sarah let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. She knelt down and stroked his fur. "You're amazing, you know that?" she whispered. Cooper licked her hand, his eyes warm and reassuring. Moments like these became frequent, and each time Sarah's confidence grew. The once fearful woman who avoided eye contact and hurried through her days now walked with a sense of purpose. She began to feel not just protected, but empowered. To maintain their bond and keep Cooper sharp, Sarah developed a routine. Mornings started with brisk walks through the neighborhood, where they would explore different routes. Sarah noticed how Cooper seemed to scan his surroundings, always alert but never anxious. His presence was like a shield, giving her the courage to enjoy her city in a way she hadn't in years. Afternoons were spent at home, where Cooper would lounge near Sarah as she worked. Occasionally, he would nudge her arm with his nose, reminding her to take breaks. These interruptions became moments of joy, short play sessions in the living room, or quick fetch games with his favorite toy. Each interaction strengthened their bond, making Cooper feel less like a pet and more like a partner. Evenings brought quieter moments. Sarah often found herself talking to Cooper about her day, her worries, and even her dreams. "You know," she said one night, stroking his soft golden fur, "I've always wanted to feel safe enough to explore the city at night. Maybe one day we'll get there." Cooper tilted his head, as if understanding her, and nudged her hand with his nose. Sarah laughed softly. "You're the best listener, you know that?" As Sarah's confidence grew, so did her willingness to confront parts of her life she had long avoided. One such moment came when she decided to visit a park she had stopped going to years ago after a mugging incident. The memory of that night had haunted her, making the park a place she deliberately avoided. But with Cooper by her side, she felt ready. As they entered the park, her heart raced. She clutched Cooper's leash tightly, but his calm presence grounded her. They walked along the familiar path, the trees casting long shadows in the fading light. Sarah felt a wave of emotions, fear, anger, and finally, relief. She was reclaiming this space, one step at a time. Near the park's center, Sarah sat on a bench and let out a deep breath. Cooper sat beside her, his head resting on her lap. She stroked his fur, feeling a sense of accomplishment. "We did it," she whispered. The park became a regular part of their routine. Each visit felt like a victory, a reminder of how far Sarah had come. It wasn't long before Sarah and Cooper became a familiar sight in the neighborhood. Store owners who once barely acknowledged her now greeted her warmly. Neighbors stopped to chat, often commenting on Cooper's handsome appearance and calm demeanor. One afternoon, as Sarah stopped by a small bakery, the owner, Mrs. Bennett, came out to say hello. "That's quite the dog you've got there," she said, handing Sarah a small bag of biscuits for Cooper. "I've seen the way people act when he's around. He's a real gentleman." Sarah smiled. "He's changed my life," she admitted. "I don't know what I'd do without him." Cooper wagged his tail as if agreeing. While most of their experiences were positive, there were challenges too. Cooper's training as a police dog meant he was highly disciplined, but it also meant he had habits that sometimes clashed with Sarah's lifestyle. For instance, Cooper often insisted on staying near the door at night, as if guarding the apartment. His vigilance was comforting, but also made Sarah wonder if he ever truly relaxed. There were also moments when Cooper's instincts took over, like the time he tried to herd a group of children playing soccer at the park. Sarah had to explain to the parents, who thankfully found it amusing. "He's just doing his job," she said with a laugh. Despite these quirks, Sarah cherished every moment with Cooper. Each challenge was an opportunity to learn more about him and deepen their bond. As weeks turned into months, Sarah noticed a profound change in herself. The fear that had once defined her life was slowly being replaced by a sense of empowerment. She began exploring new parts of the city, venturing into areas she had once avoided. Cooper's presence gave her the courage to step out of her comfort zone and embrace the world around her. One evening, Sarah found herself reflecting on the impact Cooper had made. She sat by the window, watching the city lights twinkle in the distance. Cooper lay at her feet, his golden coat glowing softly in the warm light of the room. "You've done more for me than I ever thought possible," she said, her voice filled with gratitude. "You've given me my life back." Cooper lifted his head, his intelligent eyes meeting hers. It was a silent acknowledgement, a bond that needed no words. Sarah knew her journey with Cooper was far from over. While she had already experienced so much growth, there was still more to come. She began to think about ways they could give back to the community, a way to pay forward the gift Cooper had given her. As she drifted off to sleep that night, with Cooper lying faithfully by her side, Sarah felt a sense of peace she hadn't known in years. Her life was changing, and for the first time in a long time, she welcomed it with open arms. Unbeknownst to her, the challenges ahead would test her in ways she couldn't yet imagine. But with Cooper, her remarkable companion, Sarah felt ready to face whatever came next. The night was colder than usual, with a biting wind that swept through the streets of Chicago, carrying an eerie stillness that made the shadows seem darker and the alleys more foreboding. Sarah clutched Cooper's leash tightly as they made their way to the nearby ATM. She had debated waiting until morning to withdraw money, but decided against it. Cooper's steady presence beside her gave her enough confidence to venture out despite the late hour. The streets were unusually quiet, with only the occasional flicker of a distant streetlight breaking the silence. Sarah's breath formed soft clouds in the icy air, and Cooper's golden coat shimmered faintly under the dim glow of a street lamp. As they turned a corner, the ATM came into view, its harsh fluorescent light spilling out into the empty sidewalk. Sarah approached cautiously, scanning her surroundings out of habit. The area was notorious for petty crime, and she couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. Cooper, ever vigilant, walked slightly ahead of her, his ears perked and his body language alert but calm. Just as Sarah reached the ATM, she noticed a figure lingering in the shadows nearby. Her heart rate spiked, and she instinctively moved closer to Cooper. The man stepped into the light, his face partially obscured by a dark hoodie pulled low over his eyes. His posture was slouched, but there was an unmistakable air of intent in the way he moved toward her. Sarah's mind raced. Should she leave? Call for help? Her hand hovered over her phone, but before she could act, the man took another step closer. "Hey," he said, his voice low and gravelly. "You got a second?" Cooper immediately positioned himself between Sarah and the stranger, his body tense and his gaze fixed on the man. A low growl rumbled from his throat, a warning that echoed in the stillness of the night. The man froze, his hands raised slightly in a gesture of submission. "Whoa, easy there," he said, but his voice carried an edge that made Sarah's unease grow. As Sarah took a step back, preparing to retreat, something unexpected happened. Cooper's growl ceased, and his tense posture relaxed. To Sarah's astonishment, Cooper wagged his tail and took a step toward the man. "Cooper, no!" Sarah hissed, her voice tinged with confusion. But Cooper ignored her, his excitement unmistakable. He barked once, a sharp, joyful sound, before bounding toward the man. The stranger knelt down, his hood falling back to reveal a face marked by years of experience, but softened by a warm smile. "Hey, buddy," he said, his voice now gentle and familiar. "It's been a while." Sarah stood frozen, her mind struggling to process what she was seeing. Cooper was nuzzling the man affectionately, his entire demeanor transformed. The dog who had been her fearless protector moments ago now acted like a puppy reunited with an old friend. "Who are you?" Sarah demanded, her voice shaky but firm. "How do you know my dog?" The man stood slowly, his hands still visible as if to assure her he meant no harm. "Name's Jack," he said. "I used to work with Cooper. We were partners back when he was on the force." Jack's words hung in the air, and for a moment Sarah felt as though the world had tilted on its axis. She tightened her grip on the leash, her mind racing with questions. "Partners? You mean you were his handler?" Jack nodded, his expression bittersweet. "Yeah, we served together for years. Cooper was the best partner I ever had. Smart, brave, loyal. Couldn't ask for better." But when I left the force, he stayed on. It's been a few years since I saw him." Sarah's tension eased slightly, but suspicion still lingered. "How did you recognize him in the dark? And why were you hanging around here?" Jack chuckled softly, though there was a trace of sadness in his tone. "I didn't recognize him right away. I was just passing through, saw you and your dog, and something about the way he carried himself caught my attention. Then when he barked, I knew for sure. That bark's unforgettable." Sarah glanced down at Cooper, who was now sitting calmly at Jack's feet, his tail wagging, as if the encounter were the most natural thing in the world. "So, you used to work with him. Why are you here now?" Jack hesitated, his gaze dropping to the ground for a moment. "I've been laying low, you could say. Things didn't go so well for me after I left the force, but I've been trying to get my life back together." The vulnerability in Jack's voice softened Sarah's defenses. She could see the bond between him and Cooper, and it was clear that this was no ordinary stranger. "It must have been hard to leave him behind," she said quietly. Jack nodded. "It was. But seeing him now, it's like a second chance. Thank you for taking care of him. He looks happy." Sarah felt a pang of empathy. She could tell that Jack had been through his own struggles, and the reunion with Cooper seemed to bring him a measure of comfort. "You're welcome," she said. "He's been a blessing to me, more than I can say." They stood in silence for a moment, the tension that had filled the air earlier now replaced by an unspoken understanding. Jack reached out to pet Cooper, and the dog leaned into his touch, his eyes closing in contentment. Before they parted ways, Jack looked at Sarah with a hint of hesitation. "Would it be all right if I saw Cooper again sometime? I don't want to intrude, but it'd mean a lot to me." Sarah hesitated, torn between caution and compassion. She glanced at Cooper, who seemed completely at ease with Jack, and made her decision. "All right," she said, "but let's keep it in public places for now." Jack smiled, a genuine warmth in his expression. "Thank you. You don't know what this means to me." As they exchanged contact information, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that this encounter was the beginning of something bigger. There was a story behind Jack's eyes, one she wasn't sure she was ready to uncover. But for now, she was willing to take a small step toward trust. On the way back to her apartment, Sarah replayed the night's events in her mind, the fear, the confusion, and the surprising revelation. Cooper walked beside her, his gait relaxed and his tail wagging slightly, as if he knew he had done something extraordinary. "You're full of surprises, aren't you?" Sarah said, her voice soft but filled with affection. Cooper looked up at her, his brown eyes bright with understanding. That night, as Sarah lay in bed, she couldn't help but feel a mix of emotions. She was grateful for Cooper, who had not only protected her, but also brought an unexpected connection into her life. At the same time, she couldn't ignore the questions swirling in her mind about Jack and his past. Unbeknownst to Sarah, this encounter was just the beginning. Jack's reappearance would bring new challenges, and Cooper's role in her life would prove even more vital than she had ever imagined. For now, though, as the city slept under a blanket of stars, Sarah found comfort in the steady rhythm of Cooper's breathing beside her. But somewhere in the depths of the city, shadows moved, and unseen forces began to converge. The night's events had set something into motion, and Sarah would soon discover that the bond between her and Cooper was more than just companionship, it was destiny. The days following their unexpected reunion were marked by a cautious but growing friendship between Sarah and Jack. Initially hesitant, Sarah had agreed to meet Jack in public parks or coffee shops, always accompanied by Cooper. She wanted to ensure she could trust this man who had such a profound connection to her beloved dog. Over time, however, Jack's sincerity and love for Cooper began to break down the walls of her apprehension. One crisp morning, Sarah and Jack sat on a park bench, while Cooper lay contentedly at their feet. The autumn leaves painted the landscape in warm hues, and the air carried a refreshing chill. Jack, dressed casually in a worn leather jacket, seemed both nostalgic and eager as he shared his memories of Cooper. "He was more than just a dog," Jack began, his voice steady but tinged with emotion. "Cooper was my partner, my backup, and sometimes the only thing standing between me and danger. You could trust him with your life, and I did, many times." Sarah listened intently, sipping her coffee as Jack recounted their days on the force. She could see the admiration in his eyes as he spoke, a bond that ran deeper than words. "There was one time," Jack continued, "when Cooper didn't just save me. He saved a whole team." Sarah leaned in, curious. "What happened?" Jack took a deep breath, his expression growing serious. "We were responding to a hostage situation in an abandoned warehouse. A gang had taken 2 civilians and was using them as leverage against the police. It was chaotic. We didn't have clear intel on how many hostiles were inside or where the hostages were being held." He paused, glancing down at Cooper, who wagged his tail softly, as if remembering. Cooper was trained for situations like that. He could detect movement, identify threats, and even communicate with subtle signals. When we entered the building, it was pitch dark. I sent Cooper ahead to scout. Within minutes, he found the hostages, hidden in a back room and tied up. Jack's voice grew more animated as he recalled the intensity of the moment. "But here's the thing. Cooper didn't just bark to alert us. That would have tipped off the gang. Instead, he returned to me silently and nudged my leg. Our signal found something. I followed him, and sure enough, he led us straight to the hostages." Sarah's eyes widened. "That's incredible." Jack nodded. "It was. But then, things took a turn. As we were getting the hostages out, one of the gang members ambushed us. I didn't see him coming, but Cooper did. He launched himself at the guy, knocking him to the ground and disarming him. If it weren't for Cooper, I wouldn't be sitting here today." Jack's tone softened as he shared a more personal story. "Then there was the time he saved me in a way I never expected. It was during a really rough patch in my life. I'd lost a colleague in the line of duty, and it shook me to my core. I was angry, blaming myself, and I started pushing people away." He looked out at the park, his gaze distant. "One night, I took a walk to clear my head. I wasn't thinking straight, and I wandered into a bad part of town. A group of guys cornered me, demanding my wallet. I was outnumbered, and I knew I didn't stand a chance." Jack's voice cracked slightly as he continued. "But Cooper, he was off duty that night, just relaxing at home. I hadn't even noticed he'd followed me. Out of nowhere he appeared, placing himself between me and those guys. He didn't growl or attack. He just stood there, staring them down with this quiet intensity. They backed off. It was like he knew I needed him, even when I didn't realize it myself." Sarah felt a lump in her throat as she listened. She glanced at Cooper, who lay peacefully at their feet, seemingly unaware of the heroics attributed to him. "He's remarkable," she said softly. Jack smiled. "He is. Cooper has this way of understanding people, sensing what they need. He's not just a dog, he's a lifesaver." As Jack shared these stories, Sarah found herself growing more comfortable in his presence. She could see that his connection to Cooper was genuine, and his respect for the dog mirrored her own. Over time, she began to let down her guard, inviting Jack to join her and Cooper on more walks and even occasional visits to her apartment. During one such visit, Sarah asked a question that had been on her mind since their first encounter. "Why did you leave the force?" Jack hesitated, his expression clouded. "It wasn't an easy decision," he admitted. "After years of being in the line of fire, it started to take a toll. I lost people I cared about, saw things I couldn't unsee. I realized I wasn't at my best anymore, and that wasn't fair to Cooper or anyone else." Sarah nodded, understanding the weight of his words. "It sounds like you made the right choice, even if it was hard." Jack smiled faintly. "Yeah, but leaving Cooper behind was one of the hardest things I've ever done. Seeing him with you now, happy and healthy, it means a lot." Cooper, as if sensing the deep conversation, sat up and placed his head on Jack's knee. Jack chuckled, scratching behind his ears. He always knows when someone needs a little extra support. Sarah watched the interaction with a growing sense of admiration. Cooper wasn't just a bridge between their lives. He was the foundation of a friendship that was beginning to form. As the weeks passed, Sarah and Jack began to share more of their lives with each other. Jack introduced Sarah to places in the city she'd never explored, showing her the hidden gems he had discovered during his years on the force. In return, Sarah shared stories of her own struggles and triumphs, finding in Jack a compassionate listener. One evening, as they walked along the riverfront with Cooper, Sarah turned to Jack. "You know, when I first met you, I wasn't sure I could trust you." Jack laughed softly. "Fair enough. I wouldn't trust a guy lurking near an ATM either. But now," Sarah continued, "I'm glad I gave you a chance. Cooper brought us together, and I think he knew we both needed this." Jack nodded, his expression thoughtful. "Yeah, he's got a way of bringing out the best in people." They walked in comfortable silence for a while, the city lights reflecting off the water. Cooper trotted ahead, his golden coat gleaming under the streetlights. In that moment, Sarah felt a sense of peace she hadn't known in years, a feeling that she wasn't alone anymore. Unbeknownst to them, the bond they were building would soon be tested in ways they couldn't imagine. Cooper's past as a police dog would resurface, bringing with it challenges that would require all of Sarah's newfound courage and Jack's experience. For now, though, they were content to enjoy the quiet moments, unaware of the storm that lay ahead. As they reached Sarah's apartment, Jack turned to her. "Thank you," he said sincerely, "for letting me be a part of Cooper's life again, and for letting me be a part of yours." Sarah smiled, her heart full. "Thank you for sharing him with me. I think we're all exactly where we're meant to be." Cooper wagged his tail, his eyes shining with a wisdom that seemed almost human. The past and present had converged, and together they were ready to face whatever came next. As autumn gave way to winter, Sarah and Jack's lives continued to intertwine, their bond with Cooper growing stronger by the day. Cooper, the quiet hero, remained at the center of their story, inspiring not only his two humans but soon an audience far beyond their small corner of Chicago. It all began innocuously enough. On a brisk December morning, Sarah decided to share a photo of Cooper on her social media account. The image captured Cooper sitting proudly in front of the neighborhood park's snow-covered trees, his golden fur glowing in the soft winter sunlight. Beneath the photo, Sarah wrote, "Meet Cooper, a retired police dog who's not just my protector but my greatest companion. He's been through more than I can imagine, and he's changed my life in ways I never thought possible. Thank you for being my guardian angel, Cooper." The post, heartfelt but simple, quickly caught the attention of Sarah's friends and family. Within hours, comments began pouring in. People admired Cooper's noble demeanor and expressed curiosity about his story. Encouraged by the response, Sarah decided to share more about Cooper's past, including Jack's role in his life. With Jack's permission, Sarah posted a follow-up story, this time focusing on the time Cooper had saved Jack's life during the warehouse rescue. She recounted Jack's vivid description of Cooper's bravery, how he had silently located the hostages, taken down a gang member, and ensured everyone made it out alive. To accompany the story, Sarah included a photo of Jack and Cooper, taken during one of their outings. The image showed Jack kneeling beside Cooper, his hand resting affectionately on the dog's head. The caption read, "Cooper isn't just a dog, he's a hero. His courage saved lives, including Jack's, and he continues to make an impact every day. If you ever doubt the power of loyalty and unconditional love, look no further than this amazing dog." The post resonated deeply, striking a chord with people across Sarah's network. It was shared hundreds of times, eventually catching the attention of a local journalist who reached out to Sarah for an interview. Hesitant at first, Sarah agreed, realizing this could be an opportunity to highlight the incredible bond between humans and animals. The journalist, Lisa Monroe, visited Sarah and Jack to document their story. With Cooper lying obediently by their side, Sarah and Jack shared details about his time as a K-9 officer, the challenges he had faced, and the ways he continued to enrich their lives. Lisa's article, titled "Cooper, the Golden Retriever Who Protects, Inspires and Heals," was published in the city's leading newspaper. Within days, the story spread beyond Chicago. National media outlets picked it up, and Sarah's inbox was flooded with messages from readers who had been moved by Cooper's journey. People from all walks of life connected with the story. Some shared their own experiences with beloved pets who had changed their lives, while others expressed newfound respect for service animals. Teachers wrote to Sarah, saying they had used Cooper's story to teach children about courage and compassion. A retired officer reached out to thank Cooper for his service, calling him a true hero in every sense of the word. One message stood out among the rest. It came from a woman named Elaine, who shared her struggle with loneliness after losing her husband. She wrote, "Hearing about Cooper has reminded me that there's always hope, even in the darkest times. I've been considering adopting a dog for companionship, and your story has given me the courage to take that step. Thank you for sharing." Sarah read the message with tears in her eyes. She had never anticipated how far-reaching the impact of Cooper's story could be. As the attention grew, Sarah decided to create a dedicated social media page for Cooper. She posted photos and updates about his daily life, from their peaceful walks to his moments of playful mischief. Jack contributed as well, sharing anecdotes from their time together on the force. One video in particular captured widespread attention. It showed Cooper demonstrating some of his old K-9 training skills, retrieving hidden objects and responding to Jack's commands with precision. The caption read, "Once a hero, always a hero." The video garnered millions of views, cementing Cooper's place as an internet sensation. The impact of Cooper's story extended beyond the digital world. Local shelters reported an increase in adoptions as people inspired by Cooper sought to give dogs in need a second chance. One shelter even named a rescue initiative after him, calling it Cooper's Legacy. Sarah and Jack received invitations to speak at events about the importance of service animals and the bond between humans and pets. At one such event, Jack stood before an audience, his voice steady as he recounted the moment Cooper had saved his life. "I owe everything to this dog," he said, his hand resting on Cooper's head. "But more than that, Cooper reminds us that love and loyalty have the power to change lives." The audience erupted into applause, moved by Jack's words and the sight of Cooper sitting calmly by his side. Through the overwhelming response to Cooper's story, Sarah and Jack discovered a shared purpose. They began working together to advocate for animal welfare, volunteering at shelters, and raising funds for retired service dogs. Their efforts culminated in the creation of a foundation dedicated to supporting K-9 officers after retirement, ensuring they received the care and recognition they deserved. Cooper, oblivious to his fame, continued to live his life with quiet dignity. Whether he was lying by Sarah's desk as she worked or trotting alongside Jack on a hike, he remained the same loyal companion who had brought them together. One snowy evening, as Sarah and Jack sat by the fireplace in her apartment, they reflected on the journey they had shared with Cooper. "Did you ever imagine this would happen?" Sarah asked, her voice filled with wonder. Jack shook his head, smiling. "Never, but I'm glad it did. Cooper's story isn't just about him, it's about all of us. He's reminded me of what truly matters." Sarah nodded, looking down at Cooper, who was dozing peacefully at their feet. "He's given me so much more than I ever expected, and now he's giving that same hope to so many others." As they sat in the warm glow of the fire, the city outside blanketed in snow, Sarah felt a deep sense of gratitude. Cooper had not only transformed her life, but had also become a symbol of love and resilience for countless others. Unbeknownst to them, Cooper's story was far from over. The world had embraced this remarkable dog, and his legacy was only just beginning. As the months passed, the bond between Sarah, Jack, and Cooper deepened in ways none of them could have anticipated. What began as a chance encounter had grown into a shared journey marked by trust, love, and resilience. Cooper, the golden thread that tied their lives together, continued to teach them lessons about loyalty, compassion, and the transformative power of connection. For Sarah, life had become unrecognizable from the lonely, fearful existence she once knew. Cooper's steadfast presence had given her courage, but it was Jack who showed her that she didn't have to face life's challenges alone. Their shared care for Cooper had blossomed into something more, a quiet understanding that grew stronger with each passing day. One chilly afternoon, as the first signs of spring began to peek through winter's grip, Sarah found herself reflecting on how far she had come. She watched as Jack and Cooper played in the park, their laughter and barks echoing in the crisp air. Jack tossed a ball, and Cooper bounded after it with the energy of a dog half his age. "You're amazing," Sarah whispered to herself, her words directed as much at Jack as they were at Cooper. The trio had faced their share of challenges. Cooper's fame had brought attention, both good and bad, into their lives. There were overwhelming moments when the world seemed too focused on their story, but together they navigated the chaos with grace. Jack's steady demeanor and Sarah's newfound strength became the pillars that supported them through it all. One night, after a particularly long day, Sarah sat on her couch, scrolling through the hundreds of messages they had received. Stories from people who had been inspired by Cooper filled her inbox, letters of hope, gratitude, and encouragement. Jack sat beside her, his hand resting gently on hers as they read the messages together. "This isn't just Cooper's story," Jack said quietly. "It's ours too. He's brought us together, and now we get to share that gift with others." Sarah smiled, feeling the warmth of his words settle in her heart. "I never thought I'd feel this way again," she admitted. "Like I belong somewhere, with someone." Jack turned to her, his gaze steady and filled with emotion. "You do, Sarah, you always have." As their relationship grew, so did their understanding of what love truly meant. For Jack, it was the realization that his past didn't define him and that he could build a future filled with hope and purpose. For Sarah, it was the discovery that vulnerability wasn't a weakness, but a strength, a doorway to deeper connections. Cooper, as always, was at the center of it all. His unwavering loyalty reminded them both of the importance of being present, of cherishing each moment, and of standing by the ones you love. One evening, as they walked along the riverfront, Jack paused and turned to Sarah. "You've changed my life," he said simply, "and I don't think I've told you that enough." Sarah's cheeks flushed, the cool breeze masking her blush. "You've changed mine too," she replied, "in ways I didn't think were possible." Jack reached for her hand, his grip firm but gentle. "I don't know where this road leads, but I know I want to walk it with you, together, with Cooper." Tears welled in Sarah's eyes, but they were tears of joy. "I'd like that," she said, her voice steady despite the emotions coursing through her. Cooper, sensing the moment, trotted up to them and nudged their hands with his nose, as if giving his approval. They both laughed, the sound light and free, carried away by the river's gentle current. In the months that followed, Sarah and Jack officially began their life together, building a home where laughter and love filled every corner. Cooper, now in his golden years, enjoyed the comfort of a family that adored him, a far cry from the dangerous days of his past as a police dog. One quiet evening, as they sat by the fire, Sarah reflected on everything Cooper had taught them. "He's shown us what it means to be loyal, to love without conditions," she said, stroking Cooper's fur. "No matter what challenges we face, he reminds us that we can overcome them together." Jack nodded, his hand resting on Cooper's head. He's the reason we found each other, and he's the reason we've grown into who we are. Cooper looked up at them, his intelligent eyes seeming to understand every word. His tail wagged softly, a silent affirmation of the bond they shared. As they planned their future, Sarah and Jack decided to dedicate themselves to helping others. Through their foundation for retired service dogs, they ensured that dogs like Cooper received the care and recognition they deserved. They also began working with local shelters, using their platform to inspire more people to adopt animals in need. Their efforts created ripples of change, touching lives far beyond their own. But for Sarah and Jack, the greatest gift was the life they had built together, a life filled with love, purpose, and the ever-present warmth of Cooper. Years later, as Cooper rested peacefully in his favorite spot by the fireplace, Sarah and Jack sat together, reminiscing about their journey. "He's not just our dog," Sarah said softly. "He's our teacher, our protector, our family." Jack smiled, his hand intertwined with hers, "And he always will be." In the quiet glow of the firelight, surrounded by the love they had cultivated, Sarah and Jack knew that Cooper's legacy would live on, not just in their hearts, but in the countless lives he had touched. As they leaned into each other, watching Cooper sleep soundly, they felt a deep sense of gratitude. The lessons he had taught them about love, loyalty, and resilience would guide them for the rest of their lives. And so their story, like the fire burning warmly before them, continued to glow, an enduring testament to the power of unconditional love. As Sarah and Jack reflected on their journey, one truth stood above all. The love and loyalty Cooper had shown them were reflections of a greater love, a love that comes from God. Through every challenge, Cooper had been a reminder of faith, hope, and resilience, teaching them that no matter how dark life may seem, there is always light waiting to shine through. Sarah spoke softly, her voice filled with gratitude. "Cooper taught us to trust, to love without fear, and to have faith in the goodness that surrounds us. But most of all, he reminded us of God's love, a love that is unconditional, steadfast, and always present." Jack nodded, his hand resting gently on Sarah's. "It's no coincidence that Cooper came into our lives when we needed him most. I believe he was a gift, a guardian sent to show us the way back to hope." As the fire crackled gently, they bowed their heads together, offering a prayer of thanksgiving. "Heavenly Father, thank you for the blessings you've given us, for the love of family, the loyalty of friends, and the lessons you've taught us through your creation. Bless those who hear this story, and may they find hope in your love, just as we have. Amen." To all of you who have followed Cooper's incredible journey, remember this: love and faith can overcome any obstacle. Just as Cooper changed Sarah and Jack's lives, there's a chance for all of us to bring hope to those around us, whether through kindness to others, adopting a pet in need, or simply sharing a story that uplifts and inspires. If this story has touched your heart, we encourage you to share it with others. Spread the message of loyalty, love, and God's unwavering grace. Together, let's create a world filled with compassion, where every life, human or animal, is valued and cherished. May God bless you and your loved ones, and may you always find strength and peace in His love.